Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth here. So I wanted to do this video in regards to how to balance being selfless and selfish. This is such a difficult topic to think and analyze and to talk about because there are so many different perspectives on this. And a lot of times we give a negative connotation to being selfish because a lot of times that is thought about being self absorbed, only thinking about yourself, only putting yourself first and your needs. And then we generally tend to think about being selfless as being that more kind, generous soul who thinks about others or puts others first before themselves. And it is a difficult topic because we live in a very selfish society, and in order to succeed and to have drive and ambition and to get ahead, you kind of have to be selfish. So it's a very negative quality that we've bred in society. In addition to being overly selfish, is one of the underlying root causes of narcissism and psychopathy. It's that God complex, thinking that you're the ruler, or that only you are important, or that you hold other lives in your hands, and you can control things like destiny and things like that. So throughout my experience of my own personal life, but working with a bunch of people, I see a lot of times that we have the giver soul. There are people who are more givers than receivers, whether they don't like being in the limelight, or they're signed up for service, whether they work with animals or they're a social worker, a caretaker. There are people who are selfless and selfish in various areas and realms in life. But a lot of times when you see people working in those more nurturing type of career jobs, a lot of those people end up burning out or being so exhausted because they're constantly putting everybody else in front of them, or their needs, or always donating their money. And they struggle with their paying their bills because they're always putting everybody else first instead of themselves. Whether they believe that it's better to be selfless, they're just constantly giving and giving and giving, and they're not, putting on the brakes, having borders and boundaries and things like that. Then there are other people on the other end of the spectrum, there's been a lot of research studies over the years that say like a lot of VPs and CEOs have psychopathic tendencies, although they're, not the ones who are murdering people, but they're just constantly always putting themselves in that business and that, bottom line to make that profit first. And it kind of tramples and ruins and wrecks a lot of people along the way. I mean, corporate America has done a great job at abusing people in sweatshops in other parts of the world, like Nike and Martha Stewart, and all those people have gotten exposed for labor, using other people for the profit and the gain of their own business. So with the connotations that we have with being selfish versus selfless, maybe those are the two wrong descriptive words. Maybe it's all about fairness, individual personal fairness. Now that we are entering this new age and this new energy that is Aquarian, as an Aquarian, it's like a lot of what we're seeking is fairness. It's not on a collective global scale what you see a lot of times with like modern day feminism. It's more of like man bashing and getting power over men to want, they want to replace what men have done to women, and it's not really like that. It's like you're trying to find the equality and the fairness between the two. So that's, if depending on where you lie on the spectrum of being selfish and selfless, it's a spectrum, and you want to try to balance the scales on both ends, because a lot of times we live in this culture of extremism where one person is down here or the other person is down here, or we're just living in phases where we are constantly selfless and then we burn out and then we're all selfish and only thinking about ourselves and stuff. So here are some ways to balance the two. The first thing is that you have to have some borders and boundaries. This goes for the person who is that giver soul that's always give, give, give. And it's the same for the really selfish person who is all about me and my work and blah, blah, blah. So maybe you need to put some boundaries on how many hours you spend working, or maybe you need to, if your workload, a lot of us are just held by golden handcuffs, especially if you have a high level paying job. If somebody's paying you $200,000 a year, you're not going to really just tell the company to piss off, like, I'm only going to work 7 hours a day. But maybe you have to work a little bit more 1 or 2 days a week. And then as the week goes lighter, you decrease your work hours so you don't have to work on the weekend. Putting the borders and boundaries there, or an example of the really selfless people who are the ones that you can always rely upon because they will do those tasks. They're the ones that are always hit up, and unfortunately they become prey to some degree because people can rely on them and they don't know how to say no. So the first step is borders and boundaries. Whether that's in your life, whatever part of your world is selfless or selfish, chronically selfish, applying borders and boundaries. If you are a workaholic, maybe you have to put a border or boundary on yourself to stop working at 8.5 hours and close the laptop down and spend time with your family. People that have absolutely no connection to their family, they're going to have to learn how to balance those two aspects, because as you've seen in old Hollywood movies, even like a movie like Elf, I don't believe in learning lessons from Hollywood, but I think it showed a good example about how, the guy worked for a publishing company and always thought about his family first. He never thought about his kid. And then at the end of the movie, he kind of gets this epiphany where he actually quit his job to get some balance and to spend some family time. If you're the person that's being constantly taken advantage of in life or at work, the next thing is that you need to learn how to say yes and or to say no. If you have so much on your plate and you can't take any more, or like personal training, they open up their calendar from 5 a.m. to 9 o'clock at night, and they're running around town doing these crazy ass long days, and it's like they're burning out or they're just not as productive or effective on some of their clientele. And part of that is the reason because they don't know how to say no, or they're stretching themselves so thin that maybe they need to choose 2 days a week where they work afternoons and evenings, and then other 2 or 3 days where it's morning and early afternoon, or maybe they do a split shift. But it's you don't have to say yes to everything that comes your way, but really selfish people will always say no, and they will never say yes. So how can you balance saying yes and saying no? And another thing is to understand that you can't please everyone and you can't give to everybody. That giver soul a lot of times are people pleasers. And what I've learned through group exercising and fitness is that you will never please everybody. There will be the majority of people who love your class, and then there'll be that group of naysayers who will hate it, or they'll always find something to complain about. So if you can't give to everybody, can you choose your hierarchy of people that you can be selfless to? Maybe if you don't really have family or a loved one, maybe it's your 3 best friends. Or you choose your hierarchy. Like, I'm going to be completely selfless and giving to my mother, my father, my siblings, my spouse, my kids. But you don't have to be someone, something, or someone for everyone. As much as you can try to help your community, you can't be there for everybody. So maybe in your hierarchy, it is, being involved in a church or community organization, but knowing that you're doing your best. You just can't please everybody. Some people have to choose days of the week. They have to choose their Saturday is going to be the day to kind of escape from it all, and it's going to be a TLC day with a lot of self-love and care and nurturing and relaxation. And then, on Sundays, it's the more selfish day of being productive and getting things done around the house and cooking food for the family and things like that. So learning how to say yes and no, having borders and boundaries, and you can't give to everybody. Now, if you add a 4th one in there, it's about assessing your energy levels. Everybody is different. Some people are like endurance runners. They can run marathons and go, go, go. And other people are more like a flame. They can go hard and then they burn out and then they need to restore themselves and then they can get up and go again. So when you manage and you're in tune with your physiology and you have awareness of yourself and your energy levels, you can learn to understand when you need to take a break or when you need to be selfless and or selfish in life. Because we live in this selfish society, like I explained at the beginning of the video, you either join the crowd or you go against the grain. And a lot of times, so many people have been taken advantage of because they've been selfless. And that makes people not want to be in that realm of giving or, doing those kind acts of service. So that's where assessing and having those borders and boundaries can still make you be that person that enjoys giving and sharing with people, but you're just not a pushover and you're not a doormat. And that is where the balance comes in. Like, hey, I'm a very selfless person, but I am selfless for my job between 8 and 5. And once that clock strikes 5 o'clock, then it's family time. Obviously, if you have a 4:30 meeting, it might run a little later. These things happen to where there's some degree of flexibility in life, but you don't have to, be an open door policy at all hours of the day or a closed door policy. And the people who are chronically selfish, having some acts of selflessness in your life opens your heart and opens your awareness to other things that are out there, that people are in worse situations than you. So, like I said, this isn't really an easy topic to dissect and analyze because there are some people who have just been taken advantage of so much that, they only know the one way to operate is really by being selfish. And then there's other people who've been living a selfish life and, they find some form of spirituality or something happens in their life to where they're like, wow, being selfless is so amazing, and they want to live more of that life rather than the one that's being revolved. So instead of living in one end of the spectrum, try to balance your scales to go back and forth. When you want to give. When you need to be a little selfish and take care of yourself and your needs, your basic needs, you have to have that. And you have to be a little selfish in order to just even function in society. If you're not taking care of your health or your home, that's where we spend most of our time outside of work. So if those things aren't operating in optimal function, things will tend to go into some form of dysfunction. These are some thoughts that I have. If you have any thoughts about this, please share them below. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Bye.